Please, Dimitris, now you can start.
Yep. So we were going to show you, well, you mentioned host shell tools, but the proper term is actually host tools for amiBerry because it started with one tool that was called host run back in the day, but it quickly expanded to more tools. So I thought it needs a better name than that. Let's just call it host tools for lack of a better one. So what is host tools? It's a collection of tools specifically built for, well, for amiBerry, obviously, but the idea is that they are portable to all UAE instances that implement the same kind of mechanism behind the scenes. And their purpose was to bridge the two operating systems, the amigaOS operating system on one side, which you run inside amiBerry, and whatever host operating system you're running amiBerry on. So Windows, Linux, Mac OS, anything you have on the other side. Obviously, this is open source like everything else I have built here, and it's available on GitHub under this repository where you have releases and you can download an installer for amigaOS. But I'm not going to show you the boring stuff. We're going to jump right in and see what kind of things you can do with it. There is documentation here for each and every tool that describes, including examples. But like I said, that's the boring stuff, right? We're going to do it in real life. So I'm going to fire up my, I have my 4000 clone config here. One question before we proceed, is the resolution okay here, viewable, or should I make it a bit smaller so it's a bit more enlarged? Maybe it's
What?
easier to see the text, for example, if somebody's streaming this.
I guess it depends on the size,
Yeah,
on the size of the screen of
because
each.
we will be doing shell stuff. So I think maybe it's better if we go for something like this resolution where everything is a bit larger and it's a bit easier to see, right? I think. And then I'm going to fire up directory opus just because I like it. And it's easier for me like that. And I'm going to open up a shell to show you all the magic. Now here, before I start showing you around, just a little bit of a disclaimer. These two drives are hard files in amiBerry, which means they are basically big images, hard file images. They are not directories in the host operating system. This one, on the other hand, GitHub, is a mapped directory of the operating system. That matters because I will show you in a bit what's the difference between those two. So in other words, macOS see these two as two files, which are, let's minimize this. Might be good also to show you what happens on the other side to compare easier. So if we go in here under amiBerry's folder, which is under Documents amiBerry, where we have our hard drives here, and the 4000, this is system, this is work, right? System, work, same ones. And then if I open up a new tab here, and the middle one, GitHub, this is just a directory here, and I have mounted this in amiBerry as well as a directory here. So amiBerry just sees the same directory inside amigaOS here. Okay, so what does that tell us? We have access, this is just for me when I'm developing, because that's why I have access to all my GitHub projects. And for example, I can go here where I have packaged up the installer, and maybe we can start there. So I can show you what the installer is and what it does and all that. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. This is what you get if you download the release of host tools and classic installer experience where you can choose whatever you want to do. There is a help step in most of these, and it just asks you what kind of things you want to install from the installer. It includes a bunch of things. Most of them are command line tools. We will demonstrate some of them. Then there is, of course, Amiga Guide documentation, which explains what each tool does. And these last two are new from the last release. The first one is the classic UAE AHI, how do you pronounce that? AHI or AHI or whatever, audio driver, the classic one that comes with WinUAE as well. I thought it would be best if we package this up in a proper installer at some point because it was always a bit tricky to hunt down in the extra packages of WinUAE. And the last one is something I created. This one is the version 2 of AHI driver that Tony had started with and never quite finished. This is now fully implemented, and I haven't really tested it in WinUAE, but theoretically it should work there as well. That's something to test next. The difference between these two is that, well, the old one you know already, it does all the things inside the 68K user space. So amigaOS does the mixing, and the 68K processor does the mixing and all that. The new generation of this one, the second one, the idea is that the host operating system does all the mixing and the heavy work. So performance is a bit better, and it gives you also access to multi-channel output. Now, the tools will go on and it asks you if you want to replace them because the package versions are visible here. I have already installed them, so I'm just going to proceed and skip them just to show you how the whole process goes. And once you have them installed, these go under C drive, other C assign, actually. So what can you do with them? There's a bunch of tools called host something. These are installed under C. Let's check it out. First one I would usually try out is host info. The idea with this is that it will show you some information about the host operating system you're running on. In this case, it's macOS, so it will give you the version of macOS and the username, the shell, the editor, and clipboard supported hooks. So this is just more sort of a diagnostic for me, but it's useful if you also want to use it in scripts, for example, and detect what am I running under. A lot of these tools would be very useful for people doing scripts, or even yourself if you want to try them like this. And the idea was also that they should be flexible enough to use in scripts and be rather trustworthy. Don't do any nasty stuff. So this is just an example that this talks to the operating system and it can actually get some information back, but it's not very useful, right? Let's try something more useful. One of the new tools that I have added was host download. All of these have the expected question mark where it can give you the syntax and a little explanation of what it does in the version. So this is the usage. Host download will allow you to get any URL that is accessible from the host operating system and allow you to choose also a destination if you want and save it there. What this basically allows you is you get a very quick and TLS for free, obviously, way to download something from the web, any URL you specify. And the cool thing about it is you can save it into any amigaOS accessible path. So not just the host path, I could save it to RAM, which is something that macOS cannot see, for instance. And let's try that. And also if you can get an idea about how fast it is, let's download something from Aminet, right? Something that is, I don't know, amiSSL maybe? That's a few megabytes. I know the path. Host libs, I have a note next to me. amiSSL v5 OS3 LHA. And just to compare, we can, I think I have, yeah, I browse in one of my shortcuts. So if we open up Aminet and go here and say amiSSL, right, this is the file. If I click on it, I had downloaded it before, but let's do it again. Yes, overwrite it. So it only takes a second. That's fine. And it's stored in my drive there. But let's see, I want to download it directly to RAM. You get a little progress, and now you have the file in RAM. Once I view all files, that is. Here it is. So it's a quick way to download something, and you don't have to deal with a browser. You don't have to deal with HTTPS or SSL connections. All of that happens from the host side because it uses the modern tools available there already, which AmiBerry uses itself for downloading updates, for example, for self-updating and such. So again, very useful if you want to download something on the fly during a script, for example, or something that is command line based. Next item maybe to show that would be interesting is, now that we have that, let's say, right, we can trigger host reveal. Host reveal is a tool that allows you to open up a file from amigaOS directly into the operating system's Explorer or Finder or whatever native file system file manager, file browser, what is the proper term there, has. But the trick with this one is that this obviously needs to be accessible from the host operating system. In other words, if I point it to RAM amiSSL, macOS doesn't know what RAM is. So that is expected to fail. So if I tell it, okay, open up amiSSL, it's in this path, come on. Then it will tell you, hey, native translation failed. I cannot open it from there. But watch this. If I move this into GitHub, where there is, this path is accessible on the host system, and then I tell it host reveal, GitHub, amiSSL. Where did I copy it? I didn't throw it somewhere there, right? Oh, I think it extracted it because that's what it does if you drag and drop. All right, my bad. It's still here. Okay, let's do this proper. Show this by name. That's why I like directory opus. And then just, this makes it, right, copy this over there. And now it should find it. And if I try this, it opens up Finder on macOS with that file selected automatically. So again, if you wanted for some reason to do this, now you can. Let's see, what else is interesting in this area then? Since we are in that, right. Host multi-view is another interesting thing we can look at. As the name might imply, it comes inspired from multi-view, the native tool that amigaOS had, which normally is a handler to open up any recognized file type, right? So host multi-view does the same, only it passes that file to the host operating system, allowing it to open up any file. And it can be a file, but it can also be a URL. So if I try something like host multi-view, and let's say GitHub.com, Blitter Studio, Amiberry. What did you expect would happen? Yes, so it opens up the browser because URLs are handled by this browser and it goes to that website you asked for. But let's try it with something else. I happen to have prepared a little file in my, I can click outside of that, like this. In my downloads folder, I think. Yeah, I have an MP4 file here. amigaOS cannot play MP4 files, at least not in a nice way. But what I can do is I could tell it to, let me see here, host multi-view. And then if I have a way to access that, that would work. So if I have a file in the GitHub folder is a nice place here. We can try. Let's say we copy that file in there, because let's say we are in amigaOS and we wanted to have a file that we can't really play in amigaOS. So if I go into GitHub here, I'll just dump it here just to make it easy, right? All right. So amigaOS has a NASA MP4 file here. If I say host multi-view GitHub NASA MP4, then it opens up in VLC and we see the video, because VLC just happened to be associated with MP4 files in my system. Obviously, this was handled. This would be handled differently in other operating systems or other configurations. So if you had a different player associated, it would have opened that up. It's the same as double-clicking on the file on the host system, essentially. You can think of it like that. Another interesting thing would be clipboard. You can copy file. You can already copy files or content actually between amigaOS and Amiberry. This takes it a bit to the next level. You can do it in a scripted way. So you can say, for instance, host clip, copy, and live from Amiga. Not very exciting, right? But if we go onto macOS's side and open up something like TextEdit, and I don't know, I don't need that, just give me a new file, and paste, then we get the text we just copied. And this goes both ways. You can also copy something from here. So hello from macOS or live from macOS, Can mark this, copy it. You don't see the copy, it's just a shortcut. Don't need that. And if we go here, we can say host clip paste, and you get live from macOS, exactly as expected. We can also trigger notifications. So we can say something like host notify, host tools demo, and we can give it a title also. So notification from amigaOS, and that triggers a notification which may be not visible now in macOS. I'm not sure. Normally it's visible, but we have I'm not sure if you can see it. It probably pops up in a different spot here with the sharing. This works on Linux as well. This specific part about notifications doesn't work on Windows specifically because I couldn't find a clean way to implement that without various hacks. Apparently there's no easy way to do it. Another interesting thing, another tool then is also host edit. This one opens up a text editor or the specific file that handles, or a program that handles files you want to edit. So I have a shell script here, host edit, that, and it will open up in macOS with the text edit at the moment, or anything else you had associated shell files with it. Don't need that one. And maybe one of the most interesting tools of these was also host shell, which takes it one step further. And this actually opens up an interactive shell from the host system directly into the shell that you're sitting on. So amigaOS at the moment, but you can, whatever you run here runs on macOS and you just get the results. So I can say you name A and you get Darwin, or I can call top and you will get top. So anything the host operating system CLI can run, basically you can run here. There are still some limitations that I need to look into. For example, right now it doesn't load any shell profile if you had that. It opens up a shell, yes, but as a new session, so it doesn't run the profile you may have had under your username. So for example, any specific paths you may have added there do not apply automatically. Or Homebrew, for instance, in my case, does not automatically get in the path like this. But it's still fully interactive. You get the full terminal there. You can run anything that I tested a lot of weird things that would have output that would update in real time just to make sure it works. If you want to do things like that, I'd recommend VNC as the shell. The native Amiga shell still has limitations that didn't really look that nice when you had that, mostly because it doesn't fully support ANSI codes and colors and all that stuff, where VNC does. And what else? Maybe we also have another. Well, host run was the first thing that was there already. It allows you to basically run any. No match is found. Yeah, the host run basically allows you to run any command or any application that you have on your operating system as if you were running it from the operating system's shell, the host operating system shell. This is a fire and forget. It doesn't wait for a result. It just runs it and it returns to your shell immediately. So you could just call it to run something like, I don't know, stop. But then you won't see the, oh, didn't I have it? Oh, yeah, sorry. I'm still in macOS. I need to come back to here. So this will run, but you will not see the output because it runs in the background essentially. So it only really makes sense if you want to run something that has an output somewhere. And at the moment, this will not run either because that is probably not in the path. And you don't see any results. So this is a bit, if you know exactly what you want to execute and you don't care about the results, then this is good enough in most cases. But you can also see things like you can expose what is the path, for instance, that the operating system underneath sees. For example, GitHub here on the Amiga side just looks like a drive. It just says GitHub. But you know it's mounted. So if I say I want to see the host path of GitHub, then you will see where it's mounted from. And this also helps with scripting, and you can get you can get more ideas about where the actual stuff is sitting on. So there are more host tools, but I think I've bored you enough with all that. The most interesting things we have already looked at. Maybe it's time to open up for questions. And
Sure, yes, many thanks, Dimitris.
yeah.
Let's see if there are. I would invite people, participants in the Zoom call, to just unmute and ask their questions directly. You can also type it in the chat, but then I need to have an eye on both sides. Maybe I start with one question. Actually, I was just wondering. Maybe you answered that, but it was not obvious to me. Can you then, when you're in amigaOS, could you, for example, read also environmental variables from the host OS?
Not directly, not now, I think. You can read the clipboard, but I haven't added something to read the environment variables unless you can tweak that. I need to think if there is a clever way to use one of the existing tools to do it, but it is quite easy to add. It's basically a very similar thing to the clipboard, where it reads from the clipboard and then outputs that as a text. So we can do something similar where it reads from an environment variable and outputs that as a text again. And you can pipe that to anything else you want, which is a good idea to add actually, because a lot of things are stored as environment variables. So thank you for the idea. It will come up in the next version.
Good to hear. Yeah, thank you. Let me see. I think there is something here in the chat. Awesome tool. Does this work on an emulated A500?
It works regardless of operating system version. It doesn't matter. If you open up a shell, it will work. And it works as long as the emulator, well, I should have said that from the beginning, as long as the emulator has this option selected that says allow native code. Because we want some sort of a safeguard, obviously. We don't want anybody to be able to run scripts in your emulated Amiga without any control. So this checkbox here allows kind of the main safeguard. Are these sort of commands or these sort of hooks allowed inside the emulated Amiga? Otherwise, besides that, it doesn't matter what version of Amiga are you running. It might matter for if the tools themselves have a minimum Kickstart requirement. I need to check. I haven't tested these under Kickstart 1.3, for instance. But otherwise, it shouldn't matter. And even if there is, if my tools already expected to Kickstart 2 or higher, it's possible to just recompile them for 1.3, so they work from that as well. Just nobody has asked for that before, so I never tested it. So yes, let me know if you have such a need. We can make it work.
Okay, thank you. I don't see more questions on the chat. Anybody has any question for Dimitris? Just unmute yourself. If not, then or I guess as usual, people can just post the question in the chat, and if you're still around, Dimitris, then you can answer.
Yep, I'll be happy to.
Great. Many thanks. I will stop the recording now. Thanks, Dimitris.
Thank you.
It's